Mario's been criticized by some for having no personality, but I don't think that's the case. Yes, he can be painted with broad strokes sometimes to be an audience stand-in, and since the player controls Mario's actions in so many of the games, it's easy to feel like he's not much more than a vessel. But we can see Mario's personality shine through in a variety of instances. So today I want to see what Mario's MBTI type would be given all that we know about him, and only counting the games. MBTI stands for Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. The Myers-Briggs test being a questionnaire that determines your personality type, divided into where you focus your attention, the way you take in information, how you make decisions, and how you deal with the world. This is reflected in the 4 letters in the type result. The first letter, either E or I, stands for extroversion or introversion, where you direct and receive energy and focus attention. Straight from the Myers-Briggs Foundation, people who prefer extroversion feel energized by interaction in the outer world of people and things, while people who prefer introversion feel energized when reflecting on concepts and ideas in their inner world. The second letter, either S or N, stands for sensing or intuition and describes the mental process for taking in information. People who prefer sensing pay more attention to information that is concrete and tangible, focusing on what is by paying attention to specific details and facts and relying on perception through their 5 senses. People who prefer intuition pay more attention to the patterns and possibilities in the information they receive, and focus on what could be by looking at the big picture and making connections between the facts. They mainly rely on perception through insights and hunches. The third letter, either T or F, stands for thinking or feeling and describes the mental process for deciding. People who prefer thinking put more weight on objective principles and impersonal facts when decision making, focusing on logic and analysis, while people who prefer feeling put more weight on personal concerns and the people involved when decision making, focusing on values and relationships. Finally, the fourth letter, J or P, stands for judging or perceiving, how you approach the outside world and what behaviors others tend to see. People who prefer judging like a more structured and organized lifestyle and like to control their environment by making plans or at least knowing what the plans are. People who prefer perceiving like a more flexible and open-ended lifestyle and would rather experience their environment than control it. Staying open to new information, last-minute options, and being adaptable is important to them. Now, it seems easy enough to just pick one of each and boom, you got your Myers-Briggs type, but how the letters interact with each other also greatly matters, so there are a few more layers to it than that. And also, I feel it important to note that this isn't scientific fact, and that there are many different MBTI tests aside from the official one that are all slightly different, so results may not be consistent. And we're not doing the official Myers-Briggs test. That costs $60! You think YouTube makes me that kind of money yet? No! So I looked up what some highly recommended alternatives were. One that came up was Personality Max, but that was 401 questions, so I was not about to spend my time there. The next most recommended one was the Michael Callows test, and this one was 48 questions, so I decided to try that one first. Now, I've taken an MBTI personality test before, and I gotta say, the format of this one was so much more complicated than I was used to. Normally it'd be something like you'd be presented with a statement, you would rate 1 to 5 how much you related to it. But with this one, the scale was based on a comparison of 2 statements that didn't necessarily conflict with one another. Like, how do I compare these? But I made it through the test, answering the questions through Mario's lens, and ended up getting ESFJ. According to the Myers-Briggs Foundation, this is the type description for ESFJ. Warm-hearted, conscientious, and cooperative. Want harmony in their environment and work with determination to establish it. Like to work with others to complete tasks accurately and on time. Loyal. Follow through even in small matters. Notice what others need in their day-to-day lives and try to provide it. Want to be appreciated for who they are and what they contribute. I promise we'll go more in depth with individual questions and what the results mean a little later. But I didn't fully trust this result, mainly because of the complicated nature of the format and sometimes confusingly worded questions that made me doubt the accuracy at which I completed it. And admittedly, it might not actually be that difficult, but taking one of these tests for another person and a fictional character in a fictional world, might I add, just adds a whole layer of complexity to it. So I decided to jump to another well-known one, 16 Personalities. 16 Personalities has an extremely simple format. You're given a statement and you rank how much you agree or disagree with that statement. And pretty much every statement pretty neatly matches up to a corresponding letter. For example, these were what I believe to be some of the introversion versus extroversion statements, pause to read, and you can see that Mario scores extremely highly for extroversion. He regularly interacts with strangers and makes new friends, often being the one to initiate conversations, and he definitely enjoys group and team-based activities, constantly getting together with his friends to play sports and have parties. Sensing versus intuition, however, was a much more mixed bag. And this makes sense considering it's really hard to prove Mario's mental process preferences. What these questions tend to hone in on on is, do you like to live in the here and now, or do you like to look at possibilities? And that's a bit hard to nail down in this case. For instance, Mario likely wouldn't want to write fictional stories for a living, but that's mainly because there wouldn't be enough action in it for him. I wouldn't say he's prone to worrying that things will take a turn for the worse, because he's never really paranoid that something bad could happen at any moment, despite previous events. He's always taken aback when something does happen and then jumps into action. I mean, he even invites stereotypical villains from previous games to play sports and party with him, so he's clearly not too worried about things taking a turn. But whether or not Mario is interested in discussing non-tangible concepts is such a gray area to me. I don't think he thinks pondering abstract philosophical questions is a waste of time. I could easily see him loving when Peach waxes poetic about one thing or another. And there are times where he's talking with the gang and we have no idea what they're talking about. And let's get this straight, Mario does talk. And I'm talking more than Mamma Mia's. Every time you see him make a gesture, he's saying something. Otherwise, whoever he's talking to wouldn't be able to respond so precisely. And I think this concept was cemented when Princess Peach Showtime came out, and she had some of the same moments of just gesturing without saying anything, even though we know that Peach talks as much as any other character. So to me, Mario seems like the kind of guy who would enjoy chatting with his friends about concepts and ideas, or at least listening to them talk, but would maybe rather do something actionable if given the opportunity. And then I feel like there was one game where Mario drifted off when someone talked for a little too long, but I am drawing a complete blank on what it was, so if you remember, please let me know in the comments. Feeling versus thinking was much more straightforward to me. Here are some of the questions I think fell under that category, and Mario leaned pretty much exclusively feeling. For a lot of the ones where it's prioritizing emotional arguments and following your heart over factual evidence, Mario has shown time and time again to give people second chances, and does what he thinks is the right thing to do, regardless of what has happened in the past. In many of the Mario vs. Donkey Kong games, Donkey Kong has stolen, kidnapped, and in general behaved poorly, but when Mario sees how upset he is, he pacifies him with a toy to make amends. In Bowser's Fury, Mario is skeptical about Bowser Jr. asking him for help, but decides to help him out regardless when he sees how desperate he is. And like I said before, he regularly invites his foes to join the gang in various activities, showing that he cares about how they act now more than how they've acted in the past on paper. I also agree that he prioritizes being sensitive over being completely honest, because there are definitely times where he'll go along with something because it keeps the peace. Like in Super Mario RPG, when he pretends to join Bowser's minions, or doesn't tell Mallow he's not a tadpole even though he totally knows he's not a tadpole. For judging versus perceiving, it was another mixed bag. I think Mario usually feels out his day, chilling or hanging with friends when nothing's happening. In Paper Mario, he's hanging out at his place when he gets a party invitation from Princess Peach, and not having much else to do, he just makes his way over. However, once he does have something to do, like world saving, he doesn't hesitate, and if his plans are interrupted, he finds another way to attack the problem. He also does have a clean living environment. I mean, if my place looked like any of his various houses, I'd be pretty pleased. Things like struggling with deadlines is kind of a toughie though, because the two types of deadlines Mario sometimes has are level time limits, where Mario dies if the time limit runs out, and minigame time limits, where he only has a certain amount of time to accomplish something. In both situations though, whether or not Mario is successful is entirely dependent on the player and not Mario himself. So I don't think we can say either way if Mario mentally struggles under deadlines. He may be cool as a cucumber in these circumstances. It's hard to know. 16 Personalities ended up deeming him an ENFJ, which looked promising, seeing as according to 16 Personalities, that is the protagonist type. They state that some of ENFJ's strengths are that they're receptive, reliable, passionate, altruistic, and charismatic. The weaknesses they list are being unrealistic, overly idealistic, condescending, intense, and overly empathetic. The Myers-Briggs Foundation describes ENFJs as warm, empathetic, responsive, and responsible, highly attuned to the emotions, needs, and motivations of others, find potential in everyone, and want to help others fulfill their potential, may act as catalysts for individual and group growth, loyal, responsive to praise and criticism, sociable, facilitate others in a group, and provide inspiring leadership. So was this our answer? Well, number one, I don't like that I took 2 different tests and got 2 different type results. And number 2, I didn't like that if I filled it out again and put agree for every single question, I got the exact same result as filling it out intentionally. Didn't sit right with me. So I decided to take a 3rd test to see which of these was the correct answer, which led me to another seemingly well-received test, Keys to Cognition. This one was again a pretty familiar, straightforward format, aside from a few weirdly worded questions. But the complicated thing with breaking down this test is that the questions aren't one for one with each trait. trait. They all examine type dynamics, or interactions between letters, which determine the cognitive process you use when interacting with the world. So these are some of the questions that I believe were related to the extroverted sensing process, or SE. People who exhibit this process's traits act on concrete data in the here and now, like to experience the world, and trust what is tangible and real in the present. As you can see, Mario ranked highly here. I have a main rule when answering these questions. Mario do. When impassioned, Mario no think. Mario do. Mario loves doing. Mario sometimes get himself into trouble from do he love do so much. When someone he loves is in trouble, he is ready to go. And getting in sync with people and things around you, Mario RPG, they can go from saying 2 words to each other to fighting alongside each other like friggin' Power Rangers. Now, he also scored very highly on FI, introverted feeling questions. But Anna, how can you score highly in a process that both contains extroversion and a process that contains introversion? A good question, my friend, and the answer is because the I and the E are actually referring to what we extrovert, what we use in the outside world, and what we introvert, what we use in the inside world. See, people are complex, and in such, they fully contain and utilize every letter's traits to some degree. If they didn't, they would have a completely two-dimensional personality. In such, you have a dominant process that you lean on most heavily, and then an auxiliary process that balances that out. Also, that is the only time I'm gonna use the US pronunciation, because I have to use the British pronunciation. Auxiliary, that's what I'm gonna say from here on out, because I cannot. Auxiliary, it's too much. It's just, no good mouthfeel. Do you know how many more times I'm gonna have to say it? We're going auxiliary. You win this time, British. Anyway, admittedly, explaining how all of these processes work gets a lot more in the weeds than I would like to in this video, but I'll link the Myers-Briggs page regarding the processes of type dynamics in the description. The point is, in this particular situation, FI would be the auxiliary process, which balances out the dominant SE process. And here are what I believe to be some of the questions that were determining introverted feeling processes. People who exhibit FI process traits seek harmony of action and thoughts with personal values. As we touched on previously, Mario is big on acting according to what he believes in. He doesn't fully trust Bowser Jr., but he knows that helping him would be the right thing to do and be in line with who he wants to be as a person, someone who helps people when they're in need. He follows his moral compass, though I wouldn't say that he sees things in black and white, feeling that something is either good or bad. He doesn't appreciate Donkey Kong's actions, but that doesn't mean he thinks Donkey Kong is bad. After all the times that Bowser has threatened the kingdom, Mario will still spend time with him and give him more chances. And Mario isn't perfect either, and might do things that one would label as bad. But he's always trying to do what he thinks is the right thing, regardless of if it would be labeled as good or bad to someone else. One of the processes that was demonstrated the least was TI, or introverted thinking, which would be his tertiary process, but we're not going there, it's in the link. Introverted thinkers seek internal consistency and logic of ideas, trust internal framework, and experience a depth of concentration that is objective and analytical. I think the reason these scored lower was because a lot of them have a rigidness to them that are basically the opposite of the feeling trait, which Mario was proven to be more dominant in. Mario's pretty open-minded, and these statements don't reflect that well. I was more lenient on following a straight line of reasoning, just because when Mario's given a task or objective, there's not a lot of mental gymnastics that go on. He gets task, he do. The other least demonstrated process was NI, or introverted intuiting. Introverted intuitors can appear visionary, connect unconscious images, themes, and connections to see things in new ways, brainstorm internally with themselves, and trust and rely on inner insights, which may be hard for others to understand. These, I believe, were most of the statements regarding mysticism, which Mario doesn't have himself. If he did, he'd probably see more disasters happening before they do. I would say that Mario is attracted to the mysterious, though. When you live in a world with magic, I imagine it's hard not to be. And transforming yourself by focusing inward, sure, I'll buy that. There are times where Mario focuses up or shifts his attitude to accomplish what he needs to. So all in all, Keys to Cognition classified Mario as an ESFP. The Myers-Briggs Foundation describes ESFPs as outgoing, friendly, and accepting. Exuberant lovers of life, people, and material comforts that enjoy working with others to make things happen. They bring common sense and a realistic approach to their work and make work fun. Flexible and spontaneous, they adapt readily to new people and environments and learn best from trying a new skill with other people. So, we got ESFJ on the first test, ENFJ on the second test, and ESFP on the third test. So I did personality max. You try to avoid doing 401 questions and you end up doing 557 instead. I'm not going to go through all the questions, but the format was different in that instead of rating how true each statement was, you instead chose which option best completed each statement. To be honest, I wasn't blown away by this one, since there were a ton of repeat questions and no way to go back and change an answer, which is insane if you have 401 questions. Please imagine being on question 283 and being like, Oh, actually, I think that last one, I might not have chosen that. Ugh. Anyway, they came to the conclusion that Mario was an ESFP, which they classify as the entertainer. They listed ESFP strengths as being enthusiastic and optimistic, being outstanding motivators and supporters, and being excellent problem solvers. For weaknesses, they can get easily bored, will avoid serious talks and conflicts, and may struggle with strict plans and schedules. Now, you may be wondering why I'm not reading each website's full description of the resulting types. That's because it very largely varies from site to site. Even on Just Personality Max, there are 3 different pages with 3 completely different ESFP descriptions. So it seems to me the only way to make it somewhat fair is by using only the Myers-Briggs Foundation's type descriptions. I'll do my best to link each test's results page below though, so if you want to see the extended descriptions, you can do so. Maybe, if I can't actually link to them. I don't know, I'll see. Okay, so we have ESFJ, ENFJ, ESFP, and ESFP. All the tests agree that Mario has an extroversion preference and a feeling preference, which is great. Then 3 say he leans more sensing than intuition, and it's split straight down the middle as to whether he's more judging or perceiving. These results differences make sense when you see that those 2 pairs scored pretty evenly on all of the tests. And I'm not satisfied solely basing the decision on 2 of the tests coming to the same type conclusion, so we have to take matters into our own hands. Now, I spent a really long time breaking down every aspect of these 3 types, and I have to say, you could make a solid case for Mario falling under any of them. He is outgoing, friendly, and accepting like an ESFP. He is warm-hearted, conscientious, and cooperative like an ESFJ. He is warm, empathetic, responsive, and responsible like an ENFJ. And so we must go to cognitive processes and type dynamics. And while I'm still opting to not have all the nitty-gritty details in this video, you can click the link for that, I'll show you the answers instead of the work. ESFPs have an extroverted sensing dominant process and an introverted feeling auxiliary process. This means that outwardly they show the world a sensing function and inwardly they demonstrate a feeling function. The website cognitiveprocesses.com has some great examples of each of these, along with analogies of how it would relate to picking an outfit. So examples of what extroverted sensing looks like: experiencing the immediate context, taking action in the physical world, noticing changes and opportunities for action, accumulating experiences, scanning for visible reactions and relevant data, recognizing what is. In terms of picking out an outfit, this would be noticing what was available, trying on different items, and seeing how they look. Introverted feeling looks like valuing, considering importance and worth, reviewing for incongruity, evaluating something based on the truths on which it is based, clarifying values to achieve accord, deciding if something is of significance and worth standing up for. This would be evaluating whether you like an outfit or not. Thoughts might include, this outfit suits me and feels right. ENFJs have an extroverted feeling dominant process and an introverted intuition auxiliary process. They outwardly show the world a feeling function and they inwardly demonstrate an intuition function. Extroverted feeling looks like connecting, considering others in the group, organizing to meet their needs and honor their values and feelings, maintaining societal, organizational, or group values, adjusting to and accommodating others, deciding if something is appropriate or acceptable to others. In picking an outfit, one would be considering what would be appropriate for the situation. One should or shouldn't wear, or people will think. Introverted intuition looks like foreseeing implications and likely effects without external data, realizing what will be, conceptualizing new ways of seeing things, envisioning transformations, getting an image of profound meaning or far-reaching symbols. This would be envisioning yourself in an outfit, or maybe envisioning yourself being a certain way. Finally, ESFJs have an extroverted feeling dominant process and an introverted sensing auxiliary process. They outwardly show the world a feeling function and they inwardly demonstrate a sensing function. Extroverted feeling was previously defined, but introverted sensing looks like reviewing past experiences. What is evoking what was, seeking detailed information and links to what is known, recalling stored impressions, accumulating data, recognizing the way things have always been. In outfit terms, this is remembering the last time you wore a particular item, or the last time you were at a similar event, maybe even remembering how you felt then. Taking all of that into consideration, I do think that ESFP probably suits Mario the best. Externally, he's in the here and now, enjoying the moment, but also ready to take action should something change. In combat or in a sticky situation, he takes in information from his senses to help inform his decisions. Internally, backing this up, he's reviewing his values and morals, listening to his gut, and making sure his actions align with his character. He's weighing what's worth a fight and when someone's feelings override being honest. As much as he also fits other types' traits and descriptions, ultimately I think the letter dynamics point to ESFP. But what do you think? Would you assign him something else? And why? Also, if you wanted to see all of the questions and my answers for all of the tests, I'll be posting that footage of me taking the tests on my Patreon for the original Goon Buddy tier and higher, so be sure to check that out. Now I'm off to try to figure out which letter of my personality type decided to answer 557 questions for a fictional character. Till next time.
Gambana is the wonder why she didn't come to play. Gaming vids that'll make you laugh and think and put them on replay. Intelligent, kind of funny, her community's #1. Stick around and kick your feet up. Gambana has just begun.